from this.
Yeah. Well, books are cool like that. You can get it all down in writing. So we are streaming live now on Facebook. Welcome to this week's episode of Forgiving the Girl Inside, a Matter of the Heart, coming at you live with the beautiful Tanya Ray. We are going to be hearing her beautiful story of forgiveness. And we do you have a book now, Tanya?
Yes, I do.
What's your book called?
My book is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's
Yep,
called, I hold it this way. It's called Arise, Get Up and Start Choosing You Again. It's giving, individuals practical stuff to help them start choosing themselves again too.
Yeah, and such a true statement. And it's so dear to my heart because a lot of times, especially if you have a family, you put yourself on the back burner and you don't really take care of yourself, and your body knows that something's missing and it can't quite figure it out. So, one of the reasons why I wrote Forgiving the Girl Inside, Finding Balance, Freedom, and Fun in Your Life was because I not only hid behind people pleasing, self-sabotage, and imposter syndrome, I turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with this pain that I didn't know the root cause. And digging to the root cause is so important in order to begin your daily healing journey. So today, we are going to hear the story of Tanya. But let me just give you a little bit of background about her. She is a mother of two children. She has two grandchildren. She resides in the city of Chicago, and she is a life transformation coach and the owner of Arise Life Empowerment Coaching. She's also a licensed pastor and oversees a women's ministry called Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, Women Arise Ministries. So I love that. And again, she's the author of her very first book, Arise, Get Up and Start Choosing You Again. And our listeners can find that. Where can they buy your book?
They can either go to my website, which is ariselec.com, or they can purchase it on Amazon.
Oh, awesome. So tell us, what was life like before you started this journey? I love the ministry, Wonderfully Made, because that's exactly what I always come online and tell. You are designed by God for greatness and a purpose. And He gave you beautiful gifts and talents that only you can use to serve for such a time as this. So what was life like before you had this complete peace and this joy and this understanding?
I tell my story, and they would like to order the book. I started off sharing my story in the book. For my life, I will just start talking about some of the things that I dealt with during my childhood experiences. I experienced a little abuse as a child, and then also I became pregnant as a teenager. So I was a teenage mom at the age of 16, where I was pregnant during my first year at high school. I went along, my mom had transferred me to a high school for pregnant girls. So, I finished that year of high school there. And then after I delivered my son, I tried going back to my regular high school, and to find out that they wasn't going to move me up to the next grade because they said that I didn't have enough credits to move on. So it was discouraging to me, because when you're looking at your friends and stuff like that, they're moving on, and then here you got to stay in the same grade. So it was kind of embarrassing. And then I was just discouraged by it. So I just made some choices at that time that probably, that really wasn't good choices. I began hanging out with some people and stuff like that, and doing some of the things that they were doing. And I ended up dropping out of high school. I dropped out of high school. So I'll say by the age of 21, I had two children at that time. So, even during that time, because my children had, my son and daughter had two different fathers. So just being in relationship with them, I suffered abuse being in relationship with them. So, I mean, that was a dark moment of my life, just dealing with that and just, figuring how to pull myself away from that. And then, just trying to raise two children on my own. Thank God I had my mom and my grandmother to help me, to raise my children. But it was hard being a single parent and you didn't get the help from the fathers.
Yes.
So, and then I was, not having my high school diploma, I was like working little small jobs here and there, trying to make it. Then, at one point receiving public assistance and stuff like that. So, and that, just going, going through life, trying to raise my kids. Um, I end up I end up going to school for a medical assistant, where I was going to have to be going to school at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And just somehow the job that I was working, I ended up getting laid off. So I was able to switch my time and I was able to take that. I'll tell you all I had in that experience, I had a college diploma before I had my high school diploma. People ask me how did that happen? I tell them I can't explain. I say it had to be God for it to happen. That's all that I can tell them. But I had my college diploma before I had a high school diploma. So I was able to work in the medical field for 16 years. But, and then trying to, you making money but you're still not making enough. So I would go out and try to apply for other jobs and be turned down because I didn't have that diploma. So in age, I think I was 40, in 40s, I was in my 40s. And I had bought, was able to buy my own home. And out where I lived at, I would go to the library every day, to get on the internet and look for stuff on the computer. And the library had a program where I can do the high school program from home online. So I applied for it, took the class, and that's how I ended up getting my high school diploma. So, and then, but then later on, it's like my choices begin to, my decisions begin to change because I felt like I was already in ministry. I accepted my calling to ministry like when I was in 96.
Mhm.
So I've been in ministry for like 25 years now as of September of this year. So, but going from being in ministry, raising two kids, trying to, take care of two kids. I was able to buy my own home, work on my credit, buy my own home, stuff like that. But also another dark area of my life was I dealt with sickness. I had a bad experience with diabetes where it almost took my life.
Yeah.
So in my just dealing with that, the diabetes that I had was so bad that it began to affect my kidneys. So I went into kidney failure.
Wow.
So because I'm trying to make I don't waste a lot of time. So I'm trying to make a long story short. And so going back and forth to the nephrologist, following up with my kidneys. I remember in 2012, my son was getting ready to get married and getting ready to go to his wedding. I remember waking up that morning and I just felt like something had just like ran into me. I had no energy, I had no strength, my legs were swollen, I was just sick. And I'm like, oh my God, I say, I gotta get up. My son is getting married today. I have to be at his wedding. So, I was able to get up and go do that. So after the wedding, I called my doctor and he was like, it's time for you to go ahead and start dialysis. So I also that weekend that my son was getting married was my birthday weekend. So it was like I started doing dialysis on my birthday. So then, going through that, because I did the PD dialysis, so I was doing it from home. So, and then I ended up going in the hospital because I had caught an infection in the area where my port was. So I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks on strong antibiotics. Coming out of that, then in August of 2013, I was like on my birthday, I'm at the doctor early that morning because my blood sugars were so out of control and they were just trying to figure out how to get them under control. They put an insulin pump on me.
Oh, wow.
So, tried, like I said, tried to get better control. And then I went home. I was living with my mom because I mean, also during that time, like before I went on dialysis, I had experience where they said that I had like a little mild heart attack. And I was, just living along with that. And one night wake up in the middle of the night and you down on the floor and you can't get up. And I was not in no type of pain or anything like that. When they took me to the hospital, they had told my family that I had like a little mild heart attack. So I was in the hospital with that for like 2 weeks. I had no feeling in my left side. I mean, and my right side was very weak. So, but in 2013 of August on my birthday, that's when I received the call that they had a kidney for me. So that was like the best birthday present that I could ever get, when it's like God giving you a second chance at life, because, and I think about all the experiences that I had, especially with the battles that I had with diabetes, because there were times that I passed out, didn't know I was out, would wake up at the hospital, didn't know how I got there. It was just a lot,
Yeah.
and then I remember one time going there and they said, you got here just in time because you could have slipped into a diabetic coma. So
wow, that's scary. Yeah.
So that, I had a lot of experience there, but I tell you, when I went through that, because I had a double transplant in 2013, I had a kidney pancreas transplant. So that's how I was able to get rid of the diabetes. But I just felt like at that time that I didn't only have a physical surgery. I felt like I had a spiritual surgery too, because it's like when I came out of this surgery, I had a different outlook on life, and I knew that I had to make some changes in my life, in order to make my life better. And I was, like I said, I was also in ministry. And right after that surgery, sometime after, that's when God had me to start that women's ministry. So
I love that.
yeah, that's when God gave me that about that women's ministry, and that the women's ministry that I have is like a ministry of healing and restoration. So, and I have had several women's conferences here in the city of Chicago that I bring in speakers and I allow them to minister to the women and things like that. So that's I think my first conference was like in 2017. Yeah, so I've been doing that, but just a lot of other experiences that I've gone through in my life, just being mistreated by people. I felt like within myself, I felt I had low self-esteem about myself just because of some things that happened in my past. Just not believing in myself. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. And I, now, where I'm at now, I understand that that comes from a place. That's not something that just happened. It comes from a place. So, so this year, I'll move forward to this year, when the whole pandemic started, well, last year, when the whole pandemic started and we, everybody had to stay at home,
yeah, we were all isolated.
And you're all isolated. Yeah. So this was, I had always wanted to write a book. So, I was like, okay, what am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? And I knew I wanted to tell my story, from dealing with the area of sickness and stuff like that. And I kept saying, I want to talk about the infirm woman, because I wanted to talk about the woman in the Bible. And I would tell people, I feel like I need to talk about this infirm woman. I said, because of the things that I dealt with in my life, I say, and that I have dealt with so long for so many years, and just a lot of stuff had never been dealt with. And I, when I look at that woman, especially when they talk about the woman that had that spirit of infirmity for, 18 long years. And I'm like, that's something, could have been something that she, never had, but she never dealt with. And, and over time and time, things seem to progress when you don't deal with stuff. Even with a sickness, if you don't deal with something that's ailing you, it's only going to get worse. So I knew I wanted to talk about that because a lot of, when I look back at my childhood, when I look back at a lot of the relationships that I've been in, how I was treated by people, how I was overlooked, um, just a lot of things there. And it's like this year, I told myself, I said, I'm going to write about choosing you because now within myself and out of the things that I've gone through and not believing in myself, I told myself, I said, you know what, this year, I'm going to start choosing me. I'm going to do things that makes me happy. I'm going to stop worrying about how people feel about me or how they see me, but I'm going to do some things for myself. This season is going to be about me, me bettering myself, me getting to know myself better and just becoming more confident about myself. So that's where that's where this book came from. So I'm sharing my own personal experiences throughout this book about how I had to discover who I was, because a lot of times we don't realize that we're going through life and not truly knowing who we are, and then well, I don't want to go too far.
Yeah, no, you're doing a great job. I'm really fascinated by your story. You went through so much at such a young age, and here you are, a single mom at 16. And you have this driving force behind you, like, I'm going to finish high school, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you had a great support system with your mom and grandma, so that was beautiful. But then you had some setbacks and you were just like, no, I'm not going to let that be a setback. So your determination was so beautiful, just to see your hard work, and you're like, nope, I know God's got something better for me, and I'm not going to let this bring me down. I'm just going to keep moving forward. And I definitely a God thing how you got your college degree before you got the high school. And I find it bizarre that people, okay, I have a college degree, but you want to see my high school diploma to hire me? Stop it. What is wrong with society?
Right.
I just have to say that out there, because sometimes the logic behind these rules that we have is just crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. And,
Absolutely.
I know tons of people who don't have a college degree. I don't have a college degree. I have a paralegal certification. And I graduated from high school in 1985, and you didn't really need a college degree. Like at that point, it was at the cusp of, prior to that, if you went to college, it's because you grew up in a privileged home. And if you didn't go to college, it's because you were poor. And I grew up poor. So when I went to go get a job, they're like, well, you need to go back to school. And I became a single mom at 18. And I remember looking for a full-time job, and then like they wouldn't hire me because I wasn't in college. I'm like, I'm a single mom. I can't afford college. Okay. So why is this a thing? And now everybody has to go to college in order, it's like a 4-year bachelor's is like a high school diploma. And it just, that's our experience is so much more valuable than, that paper. I mean, not that it's not a great accomplishment, but when you look at some of these experiences and when you look at what they can do and what they know, like these born talents. So, and I like how you got into the medical field, because that healing part of it. And then you're like, yeah, okay, this is all right, but it's not what God called me to do. So what was that? How did you know your calling from God? Like, what made you say, going to put this I'm not going to do this anymore. This is what I really want to do. I want to open up this ministry. I want to help. I want to help other women discover who they are.
Right. Well, that was part of when I tell you that I didn't believe in myself, because when God was calling me to ministry, I mean, I used to like to go out and party and stuff like that. And the church that I grew up in, they didn't believe in women preachers or anything like that. So I know, and my grandmother played a big part in my life, because she was the one that started, she took me, my cousins, my sister, she took all of us to church on Sunday morning, and then we would have Bible study at home with her. She would teach us how to pray and all this stuff. So I remember one year, I was invited to go to a women's retreat. And it was just so strange because, I just seemed like things was different, starting to feel different for me. And I was never the type of person that was interested in reading the Bible. And it was like this one year, I just had this thirst to really, read the word. And I'm like, what is going on? And my sister was looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Because I'll be carrying it. I mean, because me, her worked at Avon. So I would be carrying this Bible around. I'm like, on my break, I'm gonna read and stuff like that. And then I would be pointing out things to her, like, look, this is the Bible is talking about my life. And, she would be laughing at me like, what is wrong with you? But I mean, it was stuff like that had started beginning to happen. And then I remember being at, I would go visit churches, and then just the things that would be spoken to me, a lot of stuff I didn't understand what it meant. I remember going to, like I said, a women's retreat, and just how God just kept giving me scriptures. And it was like when we would go to the services, it's like they would be the very scriptures that were being talked about at night in the service. And I'm like, what's going on? It was like scary to me. So I remember one night after the service, we all the women had gathered into this burnt room, and people, they were sharing testimonies. People was sharing things that had been spoken into their life. So I was like, oh, okay, well, let me share, what, something that had been said to me. And I remember this one preacher had said to me, he said, God got something for you to do, and you're gonna have to be a fighter. I said, a fighter? Like, what that, what is that gonna be? Because I didn't understand none of that. And so I remember one night, my first apartment, when I had one night I was putting my children to bed, and it's like I went to lay my head down on the pillow, and it's like I drifted off. And it's like as soon as I closed my eyes, felt like I had drifted off, and it's like all I could remember seeing was like a white sheet, like it was covering me, and it's like it seemed like the wind was blowing. I'm like, am I dreaming, or what is really going on? And I just kept hearing like the song saying, "I love Jesus," and I woke up. So that's when I began to really question. Okay, I'm like, okay, let me start questioning some of leaders and stuff like that to find out what does this mean. And they all would tell me the same thing: God got something for you to do, but you got to change your life. And I'm like, okay. So, but at the retreat, when I began to share that with them, and one of the ladies said, Tanya, she said, you don't know that God may got a calling in your life. And I'm like, what's a calling? I'm like, what's a calling? So after the retreat, I went home, and I had told it to my grandmother. I said, I asked her I'm like, what is a calling? I said, and they told me that God got a calling in my life. And she was like, well, baby, she said, if God has a calling on your life, she said, you need to pray and ask God what is it. Ask God to reveal it to you. And I was like, okay. So I did it, and it was like the answer came immediately. And it was like when I got up that next day, and I began to open up the Word of God, and right there he said, do the work of an evangelist, preach my word. And I was like, what? I'm like, I'm not doing that. So when I told my grandmother, she was like, well, you got to go tell your pastor. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So when I went to him and I told him about it, he started laughing. I said, why God want me to do that? He said, why not you? And I started saying, I'm doing this. I started coming up with the things that I was doing wrong in my life. I said, so why did he want me to do that? He said, why not you? So I was like, okay. But I tell you, even on the first night that I was put up to speak, I was scared. I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of did like a 10-minute, and I didn't do it. But I sort of did it with some other ministers. I didn't do it. So it was so funny, because when he heard about I didn't do it, he put me up on a night all by myself while he was there. And I was like, oh my God. So it was just such an experience, to go through. But I just knew from, like I said, when you talk about the women's ministry, I just knew from myself, just out of all the experiences that I have went through, the childhood abuse, the experiences that I went through with my kid's father, with the, abuse with that. God, I just had that feeling that God wanted me to do something with women.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and then, later on, it was confirmed later on and stuff like that. So then I started doing the conferences and setting up events and stuff like that, bringing the women in and doing things like that. It's just something it deep on the inside. But when you talk about so when I started working in the medical field, because as a child, I always said I wanted to be a nurse. So even my mom, she used to want to be a nurse. So that's when I started to do medical assistant. I worked in the office as a medical assistant, but it's like that stopped being challenging to me. But it's like I always felt like there was more. I said, I'm in ministry, I'm doing things, but I started to feel like there was more that I needed to be doing. So as of this year, in February, I walked away from it. And as I walked away, I began to tell God, I said, okay, God, here I am. I'm available to you. Do what you want to do. Do what you want to do with me. I'm available now, because I was working on that job, and it's like I really didn't have a lot of time to really get out and do things, because the job was consuming a lot of my time. And I knew it was some things that God, when I was just like, God, I don't have the time to do it. I'm just like, I'm in this place from sun up to sundown. I'm working 6 days a week. When do I have time to do anything else? So this year, when the whole pandemic happened, and because I have a compromised immune system, I had to walk away. Because my doctors, my transplant doctor was like, you know what, that's a high risk environment for you. You have to come away.
Careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not even it's the physical aspect of it, but the emotional aspect of it. There's so many demands placed on the medical field. It's overwhelming, and they definitely need to give back more to the medical field, and especially the nurses and the CNAs, all the support staff, because they work hard. I've had too many experiences in the hospitals this year. And I really appreciated the people that did show up, that were there, but the stress that they had, and it was just wow. And my goal is never to ever go back there again. But I love how you had said when you got your calling, you were like, I ain't doing that. That's me. I could picture that was me all the time. It's just like, you want me to do what, Lord? No, I'm not doing that. Forget it. You got to go get someone else. And I know when I wrote my book and I shared my story the first time, I had told people, I was pregnant 3 times before the age of 17, and 2 of those pregnancies ended in abortion. And it was devastating to me, because I grew up very religious. We knew the Lord. I was taught to fear God. And, I was with a narcissist abuser, gaslighter, and he basically, oh no, it's just a blob, you're going to do it. I mean, he would tell me to jump, and I would ask how high. And, so I did what he said, and, being so young and naive, and never telling anybody, especially my mother, which swore I would never tell. It's the title of my first chapter. But I didn't realize how I felt like, I was a murderer. I felt dirty. I was so full of shame and guilt and fear. And no one talks about the aftermath of that. And any kind of abuse that you're going through, or anything that you do, they talk about forgiving, but it was so hard to forgive myself, because how do you forgive something like that? And on Fridays, I do a solo podcast, Forgiving Friday, and it's all about that journey. It goes into detail. But you had mentioned how, you said I wasn't good enough. I was doing, I was drinking, I was doing this, I was doing that. Did you ever come to the terms of forgiving yourself for those things that you gave yourself the laundry list for, that you believed were true?
I'll actually tell you, that came along when I really truly started forgiving myself was last year. Actually, when the pandemic started, just being at home, being in prayer, being before God, because I experienced some things inside the church also that caused me a lot of pain. So I kind of blamed myself for a lot of why things happened, because I allowed some things to happen. So just dealing with that, and then I allowed myself to just look down on myself because of how people treated me, the things people said. And I just had to learn how to forgive myself for that, and not seeing myself how God was seeing me. You know, I always looked at myself or what people said about me. Because people judge me for maybe how I look, they judge me for how I dress, just a lot of different things, and just not truly knowing who I was. So I dealt with a lot of guilt and shame from that, and that kept me from truly being all that God wanted me to be. So I was at some points like stuck in life. I will always be the one that would hide in the scenes. I would never step forth, when it comes to doing things, because of the way that how people talked about me. I was shamed about my look. I didn't want to be up in front of people because I'm like, people going to stare at me. I mean, it was like just the way I felt inside. And I had to learn how to just forgive myself or just allow myself to forget, feel those type of ways and stuff like that, and just putting myself in a place where I was ready to give up. I was just ready to give up on everything because of some of the things that I did experience inside the church, being hurt and stuff like that, and just being overlooked, just a lot of things there that kept me stuck in a place in my life. So last year, when the pandemic started, and when it was just, you had to be in the household, like I said, it was just me and God. I'm praying to God, I'm listening to the word, reading the word. And I told, God, I said, you know what? I know this has to change. And I tell people all the time, I experienced my biggest breakthrough in my own home. It's just when it was just me and God, and I know God, he just broke something inside of me. I remember just crying and snotting here at home by myself. I felt so broken inside, because of all the things I had. And I was in one of those positions of saying, why me? Why does all this keep happening to me? Even to a point where I went into a little depression. A lot of people don't know that I dealt with a little bit of depression because of the things that have happened to me. And I'm like, why do people treat me this way? Or people made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be with them and stuff like that. So that's where the whole I'm not good enough came from. When I was trying being around certain people, I'm kind of a loner. I kind of be to myself sometimes. A lot of times I'm by myself, but I'm like now I'm starting to get out more and do things with other, especially I was shy away from a lot of things. Like even with the women's ministry I had, I would always point people to do things where I didn't want to be in the in up front. Like, no, I'm assigning you to do this, stuff like that. But I had to step out of that, and it's just like during this whole pandemic, it just God just been revealing me to myself. He's been pointing out different things to me about me and just where these different things came from. So he taught me, he helped me to understand and to discover myself, to stop believing in myself. He made me self-aware of me, and how I allowed certain things to make me feel how I felt about myself. So, and that's just, and when you talk about forgiving, that it took a lot of inner healing for me to get to that place.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. I went through a healing journey class. It was created by Cindy Sherwood. She's out of Colorado, but it's a 29-week class, and it really we go through the life of Joseph, and you hear about all the dysfunction in his family, and how God had everything was laid out, and it built Joseph up. It helped him to live out his purpose to provide, and to be this wonderful leader that he was. But he went through so many trials and all the different things that he experienced that, like, when you read the Bible story, you don't think of it. You don't think of him, dealing with jealous brothers and, being the favorite and all of that. So it really gives you an eye opening on what your beliefs are. And we do our, our worldview, the way we're brought up, what people say to us, we take that to heart. And I know some things trigger me. In January of 19, I started the healing journey in October of 18 or September of 18. In January of 19, I chose to forgive myself, but I never really believed it because I could never forget. And to me, forgiveness meant forgetting. And I couldn't forget what I did. So it wasn't until May 7th of 2021 where God gave me a vision of my two babies, Michael and Tamara, kissing me and saying, "Mommy, we forgave you a long time ago. God forgave you a long time
Wow.
ago. Please
Mhm,
forgive yourself." And I
mhm,
just started crying, and it was just like, wow. And I really just understood at that moment what forgiveness truly meant. And you don't ever forget, but it doesn't, you let go of it. And I have a beautiful devotion that I read this morning about letting go, how forgiveness is just letting go. And when you could trust God,
mhm,
um, in those darkest moments when you're going through it. I think that's why scripture says to give thanks in all circumstances, because
mhm,
regardless, we can't change our circumstances, but we can change how we respond. And when we can look for Jesus in the midst of the pain, the midst of the tragedy, in the midst of all the things that we're dealing with, and get the strength and
mhm,
be in that moment to be filled with him, and be in that place by yourself. Like I said, you're in your home by yourself. It was just you and God. And that's exactly where you should be at all times, in all situations. It's just you and God, and tuning into the word and shutting out the world, because he has such a beautiful journey for each of us. And,
mhm,
there's no competition, and there is no, I am not, it's all I am. God says we are his children, and he made us wonderfully, and, gave us these beautiful gifts to be able to use to serve
mhm,
others. And you have gifts and talents that I don't have. And you have the people that you're going to reach, and I have the people that I'm going to reach. And that's how it is for each and every one of us. And
mhm,
God has this beautiful revelation through creation, and then the special revelation through the Bible. And it's like, if everyone could just turn to the word and get into that personal space with the Lord, they can stop that self-sabotage, that people pleasing, and
mhm,
get the healing that they need. So I love what you're doing. I love your journey. I'm going to have to get your book. I'm excited to read that. And
mhm,
so tell us, you have a coaching business as well.
mhm.
What's the best way for people to get in connection with you, and tell us a little bit about your coaching business?
Best way to get in contact with me, I have a business page on Facebook where they can reach is if they want to reach me, they can reach me at Empower 22.
Okay.
Because my business, the name of my business is Arise Life Empowerment Coaching. So
Okay.
I am a life transformational coach where I help people to develop a growth mindset, to how to see things different, look at things from a different perspective, have, change your mindset, because if you can change your mindset, then you can change your life. So, and you
Yes.
could tell by a lot of the stuff that I went through that I had to do the same thing in order to change my mindset in order to be able to move forward in life. So I deal with that. My most current is clients that I've dealt with have been like with a lot of emotional stuff. So I teach
Hmm.
like emotional intelligence. So most of them that I've dealt with have been dealing with some part of grief. So they want to know how to handle some of the emotions with that. And I talk to them about emotional healing, you know, how to receive emotional healing, from something so dramatic as that, that's a trauma, especially when you lose someone sudden, so, and you don't know what to deal with those emotions. It's like you still in that state of shock. So, and then, I talk to them as far as the emotion stuff, I teach them about how to recognize, understand, and manage their own emotions. So that when in relationships with other people, and I'm not just talking about a relationship between a male and female, but any type of relationship, when you're dealing with somebody else, you have to be able to recognize their emotions, their moods and behaviors and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's two components to that. It's the interpersonal skills and your interpersonal skills. So you're knowing how to handle both. But far as yourself, I'm helping them to understand, get to recognize the triggers, know what triggers an emotionality, so that when things happen, you can, when you see that this is coming, you'll know how to handle it. You'll know how to respond to it instead of responding in a negative way. So I'm walking them through those type of process, because you got to understand the things that come to create a negative reaction out of it. So,
Right. Yeah.
I'm teaching them how to rise above it. Don't react to it, but rise above it. I have this one thing I say all the time now: train your mind to be stronger than your emotions. That's the only way you're going to be able to rise above it.
Yeah,
So
get rid of your stinking thinking. I always say, if thoughts were a person and came knocking on your door, would you let them in? So our thoughts are very powerful, and we do need to rewire our brain, get new brain grooves.
right, yeah.
So
I also teach life purpose coaching. So
okay.
a lot of people don't. They want to know what their purpose. They really don't understand what their purpose is. So
Yeah.
I take them through steps to kind of reveal. I tell them all the time, I'm not going to tell you what your purpose is, but I'm going to take you through steps to help you understand your true purpose in life, to help you discover yourself and understand your purpose. So
Yes, and that's beautiful. Well, we will put the links in the on the Facebook page, and of course, once the podcast gets uploaded and goes on YouTube, we're going to have all your links there. So if you're watching live, we'd love to know your biggest takeaway. If you'd like to connect with Tanya, send her a direct message. Go visit her website, buy her book on Amazon, and be sure to share this with anyone that would benefit from it. So thank you so much, Tanya, for being here. And thank you for all those who are listening and watching and sharing. And remember, we're all on a daily healing journey. It's a matter of the heart.
yes.